Welcome to When Gen X Ruled the Multiplex, the films that shaped the MTV generation. One of the first films directly influenced by the growing dominance of MTV was Flashdance, which hit theaters in April of 1983. Flashdance was directed by Adrian Lyne, then known for 1980s coming-of-age drama Foxes. After the success of Flashdance, Lyne directed the hits 9.5 Weeks and Fatal Attraction. The story idea for Flashdance is credited to Esquire editor Thomas Headley Jr., while the script was written by Headley and Joe Eszterhas. Eszterhas would gain notoriety in the 1990s as the screenwriter of Basic Instinct and Showgirls. Flashdance is based on the life of Maureen Marder, a welder-turned-dancer who signed away the rights to her life story to Paramount for a bit over $2,000. Though critically savaged upon release, Flashdance was a huge box office success and quickly became a pop culture phenomenon, launching fashion trends, dominating the pop music charts, and blazing a new path for films geared towards members of Generation X. Flashdance opens in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where a teenager named Alex rides her bike through rainy streets to her day job as a welder in a steel plant, while the film's theme song, Flashdance What a Feeling, plays. Flashdance What a Feeling, which spent 6 weeks at #1 on the Billboard charts, was written and produced by disco and electronic music legend Giorgio Moroder. Moroder wrote and produced tons of songs from the 70s and 80s that you know and love, such as I Feel Love, Last Dance, On the Radio, Take My Breath Away, Call Me, and Neverending Story. Flashdance What a Feeling is sung by Irene Cara, who'd had a big hit in 1980 with the theme song from the film Fame, in which she also starred. Alex is played by Jennifer Beals. A former teen model, Beals was a freshman at Yale when she was cast in Flashdance, the role that made her an overnight star. After Flashdance, Beals went on to star in the films The Bride and Vampire's Kiss, as well as the Showtime series The L Word. After work, Alex heads to her second job as a dancer in a bar called Mobbies. While there's a sexual element to the dancing, this isn't a strip club. The dancers remain clothed in flashy costumes while they perform creative solo routines. Apparently, the screenplay took this idea from a trend in Vancouver bars, where the dancers would put on a nightly floor show. Flashdance was released well before the burlesque revival of the early 1990s, but the idea of a sexy dance act that prioritizes artistry over nudity is more or less the same. Alex takes the stage and dances to He's a Dream by Shandy Cinnamon in a stylized routine in which she appears mostly in silhouette. At one very famous moment, she yanks on a chain and gets drenched in water, which pours from the ceiling. Jennifer Beals is not a dancer, so multiple uncredited dance doubles were used throughout the film. Most of Alex's dancing is done by French dancer Marine Jahan, whom we saw in Streets of Fire. The dance sequences in Flashdance, which are universally excellent, are choreographed by Jeffrey Hornaday, and they combine elements of jazz dance, ballet, and breakdancing. Alex's new boss at the steel plant, Nick Hurley, drops into Mobbies to watch the dancers, and his colleague lets him know Alex is one of his employees. Nick is played by Michael Nouri, best known at the time for the soap opera Search for Tomorrow. Backstage, Alex hangs out with her fellow dancers, who include Tina Tech, played by Cynthia Rhodes, who starred in Staying Alive and played Penny in Dirty Dancing. Alex's close friend Jeannie works as a waitress at Mobbies to pay the bills while she pursues her dream of becoming a professional ice skater. Jeannie's boyfriend Richie works as the short order cook at Mobbies while dreaming of making it big as a stand-up comedian. Richie is played by Kyle T. Hefner, while Jeannie is played by Sonny Johnson, who died the year after Flashdance was released from a burst blood vessel in her brain. At the steel mill, Nick approaches Alex and flirts with her. Considering that Nick is Alex's boss, they're currently at their mutual place of employment, and Nick is twice Alex's age, Jennifer Beals was 18 during filming while Michael Nouri was 36, I have a great many questions about Nick's judgment. Alex lives with a very good pit bull named Grunt in a fantastic and cavernous old warehouse. In a sequence scored to this film's other #1 hit, Michael Cimbello's Maniac, she dances around wildly by herself. It's impossible to talk about Flashdance without mentioning Alex's style of dressing, specifically the loose-fitting shirts and sweatshirts with the neckband cut off to allow it to fall off of one or both shoulders. This was a steamroller of a fashion trend throughout the 80s. Of course, I wore this look all the time in 1983. We all did. I was a pudgy 9-year-old, and it didn't look nearly as flattering on me as it does on Jennifer Beals. Alex bikes to the Pittsburgh Dance and Repertory Company, where aspiring dancers are picking up applications to join the company. While this is Alex's dream career, she feels out of her depth due to her lack of formal training, and she leaves without applying. At the steel mill, Nick flirts some more with Alex, and Alex very sensibly tells him she has no interest in dating her boss. After work, she meets with her friend and mentor Hannah, a retired dancer played by Lilia Scala from Lilies of the Field, who encourages Alex to pursue her dream of dancing professionally. A sleazy strip club owner named Johnny C. tries to recruit Alex and Jeannie to dance in his club, the Zanzibar. Johnny C. is played by Lee Ving, frontman of the hardcore punk band Fear, whom we have seen in Streets of Fire. While Joan Jett and the Blackhearts' I Love Rock and Roll Blast Alex. Alex, Jeannie, Tina, and another dancer named Heels, who is played by longtime Pink Floyd backing vocalist Durga McBroom, lift some weights. Because there's not so much going on with the story that the film can't stop down for 5 minutes to watch our lead character break a sweat on the Nautilus. As with much of Flashdance, this sequence is shot in the style of an early 80s music video, with lots of quick cuts and extreme close-ups against a stark background. If you stumbled across it unaware, you could be forgiven for assuming you were watching the video for Olivia Newton-John's Physical. Alex and Jeannie watch breakdancers on the street dancing to It's Just Begun by funk group The Jimmy Castor Bunch. At Mobbies, aspiring comic Richie takes the stage to test out his stand-up routine. He bombs at first, then wins over the crowd by joking about the Steelers. One of the hecklers in the audience is played by R-list star Robert Wuhl, whom we have seen playing Allie Knox in Tim Burton's Batman. Tina Tech comes out covered in body glitter and dances to Karen Kamen's Manhunt. Johnny C sits in the audience and harasses Alex, who dumps a beer in his crotch. After the show, Johnny C and his henchmen jump Alex and Richie in the parking lot. Nick, who knows Johnny C from the neighborhood, gets them to back off. He offers Alex a ride home, she turns him down, so he trails her on her bike in his Porsche through dark and rainy streets, because Nick has boundary issues. At Alex's warehouse, Nick pressures her to date him. Alex refuses to date her boss, so he jokes to his teen employee that she's fired, and tells her he'll pick her up at 8. Alex takes Nick to an ice skating competition, where Jeannie does a routine to Laura Branigan's Gloria. Despite her outstanding song choice, Jeannie whiffs the routine and falls on the ice, thus destroying her one and only shot at becoming a pro skater. Alex and Nick grab a pizza and go back to her place. After Nick calls Alex a weirdo for living in a warehouse, which, I mean, come on dude, that place is awesome, they tumble into bed together. There's a montage of Nick and Alex falling in love, scored to Joe Esposito's Lady, Lady, Lady. Lady, Lady, Lady is an okay song, but it comes in a distant second to Joe Esposito's other notable song from a hit 1980s film, You're the Best from The Karate Kid, which makes me want to triumphantly crane kick someone in the head every time I hear it. At Mobbies, Alex dances on stage to Laura Branigan's Imagination. The Flashdance soundtrack is heavy on Laura Branigan, and I am here for it. The late Ms. Branigan was a vastly underrated 1980s goddess. For her performance, Alex wears white kabuki-style makeup paired with a tremendous amount of sparkly clothing, while posing beneath a strobe light in front of a giant television set. She strips off her outer layers to reveal the red satin business suit beneath, and then she strips off the red satin business suit to reveal her electric blue spandex pedal pushers. And if you ever want to know why I love the 80s so much, I'm going to point you in the direction of this sequence. While attending the ballet with Hannah, Alex spots Nick leaving with another woman. Enraged, Alex rides her bike to Nick's home and hurls a rock through his front window, which is mighty aggressive behavior from someone who is too timid to pick up an application for a ballet company because a pair of ballerinas might have been whispering about her behind her back. Richie drops by the warehouse to tell Alex he's leaving Jeannie behind and moving to LA to make it on his own in the comedy world. At the steel mill, Alex yells at Nick for cheating on her, and Nick explains that he was at the ballet with his ex-wife, and then they make up while all the dudes who work at the steel mill cheer them on. Alex and Nick go to a fancy restaurant where Alex eats lobster with her fingers and tells him how much the food sucks while jamming her foot in his crotch. Nick introduces Alex to his ex-wife Katie, played by Belinda Bauer, who goes far out of her way to be a massive jerk to Alex, so Alex goes far out of her way to be a massive jerk in return. While in bed together, Nick gives Alex a pep talk about pursuing her dreams. Inspired, Alex marches into the repertory company and confidently asks for an application. Nick secretly trails her, then intimidates the receptionist into telling him what Alex was doing there. He then calls up a friend on the Arts Council and talks him into giving Alex a chance to audition. Richie shows up at a Halloween party at Mobbies, having had no success in LA. He has a frosty reunion with Jeannie. In Richie's absence, with her dreams of a skating career in ruins, Jeannie has hooked up with the despicable Johnny C. Alex and Nick go out to celebrate, but Nick lets it slip that he pulled strings to get her the audition. They get into a shouting match in the middle of the 2nd Street Tunnel, which we have seen in Blade Runner, Terminator, and Repo Man. It pops up in films a lot because it photographs extremely well, though it's weird to see it in a film set in Pittsburgh because it is located in downtown Los Angeles. When Alex learns that Jeannie has been dancing topless at the Zanzibar, she storms into the club, physically drags her off the stage, and throws all of Jeannie's hard-earned tips into the rain-soaked gutter. For a film that's all about sexy dancing in front of a predominantly male clientele, Flashdance is weirdly snobby about stripping, as though dancing immediately loses all artistry the second you whip out your boobs. After learning that Hannah has died, Alex decides that it's time to start pursuing her dream. She attends the audition where she dances beautifully to Flashdance What a Feeling and wows the judges. This is a very famous scene for good reason. Alex's audition is a showstopper. In addition to her usual dance double Maureen Jahan, Alex's dancing is doubled by gymnast Sharon Shapiro and legendary b-boy Crazy Legs of the Rocksteady crew, who infamously did not bother to shave his mustache while impersonating Jennifer Beals. After nailing the heck out of her audition, Alex triumphantly runs out of the dance studio and finds Nick waiting for her with roses. Flashdance has an unbeatable concept. I can see why Paramount was interested in snaking the rights to Maureen Marder's life story, because the idea of a welder by day, dancer by night is pure storytelling gold. Flashdance was produced by Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, a team of super producers who would go on to bring us Beverly Hills Cop and Top Gun. Don Simpson was a former president of production at Paramount who had been fired in 1982 due to his erratic behavior. There's a persistent rumor that Paramount had no faith in the Flashdance script and, due to their existing bad blood with Simpson, gave it to Simpson and Bruckheimer to produce in the hopes it would tank. On the one hand, I have trouble believing that rumor because studio-financed films are a big, expensive endeavor, and it's hard to picture a studio actively rooting for one of its films to fail. On the other hand, it's hard to picture a studio looking at the screenplay to Flashdance and thinking, yep, we've got a winner on our hands, let's put that puppy into production. Flashdance is a super entertaining film that just so happens to have an utterly terrible script. In this series, I've looked at films that are much worse than Flashdance. Solar Babies and Howard the Duck immediately spring to mind. However, the script for Flashdance is worse than the script for either of those films. The dialogue is clumsy. The characters don't act like human beings. The core central romance is appalling. The story takes multiple pointless detours. We get 2 scenes of Alex going to confessional, even though Alex's religious faith is not important to the story in any way, and nothing she reveals in confessional tells us anything about Alex we didn't already know. On the page, Alex is written so inconsistently from scene to scene that she seems like a bizarre mess of a character. Luckily, Jennifer Beals is very likable in the role, and she prevents Alex from being an all-out disaster. Flashdance works on film much better than it does on paper, and while Beals is one of the film's undeniable assets, its success is mostly due to the music and to the dancing. Critics despised this film. When Flashdance was released in theaters, a scathing review in Variety compared it to watching MTV for 96 minutes. This is 100% accurate. The Variety reviewer meant that as a negative, though, which is interesting because it shows the growing disconnect between Gen X and members of older generations. What Variety saw as a fatal flaw Gen Xers understood was the core of the film's appeal. Flashdance was like watching MTV for 96 minutes. In the battle between style and substance, substance didn't even bother showing up to the fight. That terrible script just exists as a rudimentary framework upon which to display all these striking visuals set to great music. That was enough to make Flashdance one of the most iconic films of the decade. Next time, I'm feeling the need for speed, so I'll be taking a look at Top Gun. Thank you for joining me here today, and I hope to see you next time.